He commanded the man before him to approach. Ethan Cole, his husband of a short time, obeyed without a word. He was a prime alpha, sculpted and handsome, with a quiet strength that made him the object of countless desires. Now he belonged to Julian. Julian's own intentions were simple. He wanted to be enveloped in Ethan's pheromones. The scent, a subtle but intoxicating camellia, was one of the defining qualities of a superior alpha. Julian gestured for him to come even closer, a smile playing on his lips as he chided that he had no intention of eating him, at least not in the conventional sense. When Ethan's hesitant steps still left a gap between them, Julian's patience frayed. They were married, after all. Intimacy should be a given. With a fluid motion, he closed the distance himself, swinging his legs to straddle Ethan's lap. This, he murmured, his head resting on Ethan's shoulder, was what he considered close. He wrapped his arms around Ethan's waist and inhaled deeply. The floral fragrance was exquisite, a scent he craved. He took another long, slow breath, feeling a bit like a predator with his prey, but a wife was entitled to her husband's scent. He felt a subtle shift in Ethan's body, a tension that sparked his interest. He offered his assistance, suggesting they might finally engage in the sort of activities that cultivated a marital bond. Ethan demurred, a familiar pattern of avoidance that Julian couldn't comprehend. The man was clearly affected by him, yet they had never shared a bed. It was confounding. Julian knew his own alpha status was lesser, but his looks had never been a problem. The line of his admirers could stretch down Fifth Avenue. Nor was it an issue of wealth. The Sterling family fortune was old and vast, dwarfing the modest success of Ethan's family business. The mystery of Ethan's resistance was a constant source of frustration. Perhaps he found Julian's forwardness off-putting. The thought that he should try to be more reserved was a novel one, but he didn't want to frighten away the man he'd gone to such lengths to acquire. He had first seen Ethan at his father's annual charity gala. The Coles had been invited due to some minor business dealings with the Sterling Corporation. Amidst a sea of socialites and power brokers, Ethan stood apart. He was a portrait of calm competence, navigating conversations with an easy grace that captivated Julian instantly. From that moment on, at every subsequent event, Julian's gaze was fixed on him. He orchestrated the union with ruthless efficiency, leveraging his father's influence to propose a merger that came with a marital contract. The Coles had readily agreed. An alliance with the Sterlings was an opportunity no one would refuse. The wedding was swift. Julian had been certain that affection would follow, but he was beginning to doubt his strategy. One afternoon, Julian decided to bring a specially prepared lunch to Ethan at his office. As he neared the door, he heard the low murmur of voices. He waited, not wanting to interrupt. The door opened and a young man, an Omega by his scent, rushed out with red-rimmed eyes, tears still clinging to his lashes. Julian stepped inside just as the man left. Ethan's voice was harsh, laced with reprimand, clearly assuming the Omega had returned. Julian watched him for a moment before speaking, his tone soft as he asked about the source of his temper. He placed the insulated container on the polished desk. Upon hearing Julian's voice, Ethan looked up, his expression immediately shifting to one of apology. He explained that he'd mistaken him for the person who had just left. Even in anger, with his brow furrowed, Ethan was strikingly handsome. That night, Julian found himself in a low-lit lounge, the air thick with perfume and the thrum of bass. He nursed a whiskey, his mood sour. His friend, Leo, noticed his foul disposition and asked what was troubling him. Julian confessed the sheer agony of being married for over a month without so much as a taste of intimacy. He felt like a monk in a brothel, forced into a charade of demure restraint that was entirely against his nature. Leo was incredulous that he hadn't yet claimed a man as prime as Ethan. Julian explained his fear of scaring Ethan off, lamenting that they hadn't even kissed. He kept the deeper truth to himself, that they hadn't even held hands. He could force the issue, but the thought of Ethan's displeasure was a potent deterrent. Leo, ever the man of action, scoffed at the idea of restraint. He ordered a potent drink and laid out a simple plan. Julian was to drink it, then call Ethan. Leo would do the talking. Trusting his friend, Julian downed the liquor in one go. The effect was immediate and overwhelming, a dizzying heat that spread through his limbs. He slumped onto the table as Leo took his phone and made the call. Sometime later, a tall figure stood over him. He was lifted carefully into strong arms, the familiar, grounding scent of camellia cutting through his drunken haze. It was Ethan. The journey home was a blur, but he clung to Ethan, refusing to let go. Ethan placed him in the large bathtub, the warm water a soothing balm. As Ethan gently began to clean his skin, Julian tugged on his arm, wanting him closer. His pull was too strong, and Ethan tumbled into the tub with him. The fine white dress shirt was instantly soaked, clinging to the hard planes of his chest and abdomen. Buoyed by liquid courage, Julian's hands began to explore, tracing the firm muscles. He could feel the solid strength, the result of dedicated physical training. Ethan seemed stunned by the sudden advance. Julian seized the moment, hooking an arm around his neck and whispering how good he smelled before pressing a soft kiss to his forehead. His heart hammered against his ribs. Even intoxicated, the proximity of the man he loved made him nervous. When Ethan remained frozen, Julian grew bolder, his fingers trailing slowly, deliberately, over his stomach. He felt Ethan's breath hitch, a clear sign that his stoicism was failing. Feeling the shift in power, Julian leaned in, his lips brushing against Ethan's before he gave a playful bite. That was all it took. Ethan's eyes met his, and he took control, kissing him with a desperate, possessive hunger that left Julian breathless. The rest of the night unfolded as a matter of course. When Ethan finally bit into his scent gland, a sharp pain flared, hot and intense, before mellowing into a deep, resonant pleasure. The stamina of a prime alpha was no myth. He didn't wake until nearly 5 the next evening, his body a canvas of pleasant aches. It had been worth it. The experience had been powerful, almost debilitating. Having crossed that threshold, the craving only intensified. His own rut was approaching, a difficult time for a lesser alpha like him. To make matters worse, Ethan was away on a business trip overseas. One evening after dinner, Julian caught the faint scent of his own jasmine pheromones, a rarity that only surfaced with intensity during his cycle. A wave of dizziness washed over him. He administered the suppressor he kept on hand, but this cycle was different. His gland was swollen and itchy, his body racked with a deep, throbbing pain. Overwhelmed, he called Ethan. He could barely manage more than a soft whimper into the phone, asking why it hurt so much this time. A strange voice answered, not Ethan's. It was a man, asking who was calling. Julian, through a wave of pain, instructed him to give the phone to Ethan. The man on the other end sounded smug, informing him that Mr. Cole was in the shower and asking if he could take a message. The voice oozed a triumphant possessiveness that grated on Julian's raw nerves. He asked if Ethan knew he was using his phone. The man laughed, claiming Ethan had given him permission to do whatever he wanted. The combination of his physical agony and the man's insolent tone ignited his temper. He asked if the man was aware that Ethan was married. The man's reply was a poisoned dart. Marriages can end, and besides, Ethan was with him now. He reminded Julian that he was just another alpha. Julian hung up, the words echoing in his mind. He didn't dare to let himself believe Ethan would betray him, but the marriage had been his own construct, forced upon another. Tears of pain and humiliation streamed down his face. The pain became unbearable, and he called the estate manager, who summoned their family doctor. The physician explained that prolonged exposure to a prime alpha like Ethan could disrupt and intensify a lesser alpha cycle. The only recommendation was separation. The diagnosis solidified a painful realization. He was a lesser alpha. It was only natural that Ethan wouldn't truly desire him. An alpha-alpha pairing was controversial enough. A forced one was a public humiliation for a man like Ethan. The fault was his alone. After the cycle passed, he contacted his lawyer and had divorce papers drawn up. He signed them and left the document on the most prominent table in their living room. Then he left the country, seeking treatment for his gland, the physical manifestation of an inadequacy that had haunted him his entire life. As a Sterling, he was expected to be exceptional, yet he was flawed. His parents had compensated by indulging his every whim, a gilded cage that kept his insecurities at bay. But it couldn't buy him the one thing he truly wanted. A few weeks later, he was plagued by a persistent lack of appetite. He attributed it to the new environment, but a checkup revealed the unbelievable truth. He was pregnant. The timing was catastrophic. His physical condition was fragile. He resolved to regain his strength before terminating the pregnancy, his hand resting on his stomach with a sense of profound sorrow. A strange feeling that he was being watched had been nagging at him for days. He instructed his security detail to be more vigilant. The news from Ethan's side was non-existent. He tried not to think about it, seeking solace in long, slow walks through the local parks. One afternoon, a group of men on motorcycles blocked his path. Their leader, a leering alpha, crudely invited him for a ride. The air filled with their aggressive, unrefined pheromones, a scent so foul it made him nauseous. It was nothing like Ethan's. He politely refused, but they grew more insistent, their leader grabbing for his arm. Julian, who had more than a little self-defense training, was preparing to retaliate when a powerful wave of pure camellia scent washed over the area. It was the scent of a dominant prime alpha, and it brought the hooligans to their knees. They stammered apologies, claiming they didn't know he belonged to someone, and fled. Before Julian could even process what had happened, Ethan was there, pulling him into a crushing embrace. He felt thinner and he was trembling. His face was etched with exhaustion, his eyes bloodshot. He held Julian as if he were afraid he might disappear. He begged him not to leave again. Julian, his own emotions in turmoil, questioned why he should stay with someone who didn't love him. The stress and pregnancy hormones overwhelmed him, and he began to cry. Ethan held him, wiping his tears, and waited until he was calm before explaining everything. The reason he had been so distant in the beginning was because his own rut had been imminent. A prime alpha cycle was violent, and the doctor had warned him it could seriously harm a lesser alpha. So he kept his distance, sleeping in a separate room, secretly clutching a piece of Julian's clothing to endure the agony. The business trip to America wasn't just for work. He was consulting with specialists, desperately searching for a solution to their biological incompatibility. The man who answered his phone was a presumptuous colleague who had been immediately fired after the incident. As Julian listened, he felt the weight of his own foolish assumptions. Later that night, held securely in Ethan's arms, the rest of the story came out. Ethan confessed his feelings, admitting he'd been infatuated from the first moment he saw Julian at the galas, a radiant figure he never dreamed he could have. The marriage proposal had been a fantasy come true, but it came with the terrifying knowledge that his very biology could hurt the person he loved most. The kiss in the bathtub had been an undoing of all his restraint. He had wanted Julian too much to resist any longer. He apologized for his failures, for the misunderstanding, for not being a better husband. He pleaded with Julian not to divorce him. Julian, in turn, confessed his own fault in rushing to judgment, in not communicating his fears. Ethan's hand moved to his stomach, a look of awe and self-reproach on his face as he realized what he had almost lost. He promised to be there for him and the baby. A few days later, Ethan was gone again. He told Julian he had found a solution, a simple procedure, and asked him to wait. Without Ethan's presence, the baby grew restless inside him. Julian took to sleeping in a nest of Ethan's clothes, breathing in the faint, lingering scent of camellia. 3 days later, Ethan returned. He had undergone a procedure to have his scent gland surgically altered, reducing its potency to a level that would no longer harm Julian. It was a radical, irreversible act. For a prime alpha, the gland was a source of power and status. To willingly diminish it was an unimaginable sacrifice. Julian was speechless, then furious, crying that Ethan was selfish, that he had ruined his own future for him. The Cole family would never accept a diminished heir. Ethan simply held him, silencing his protests with a deep, searing kiss. When he pulled back, his eyes were full of unwavering devotion. There was nothing he wouldn't do for him. Loving Julian was not a sacrifice. Nothing that brought them together could ever be a loss. Ethan's recovery was quick. Though his alpha grade was lower, he was otherwise unchanged. Julian, free from the hormonal turbulence, began to flourish. 3 months into the pregnancy, Julian's desires resurfaced with a vengeance. He tried hinting, but Ethan seemed oblivious. One night, he took matters into his own hands, his fingers tracing patterns on Ethan's stomach, moving ever lower. Ethan cautioned him to behave, but Julian pleaded, his voice laced with a theatrical desperation that finally broke through his husband's resolve. Ethan admitted that 3 months was considered safe, a look of long-suppressed hunger in his eyes. Their lovemaking was slow and gentle, careful of the precious life between them. Afterwards, Julian fell asleep, content and wrapped in the scent of camellias. Their son, a healthy alpha boy, was born in July. From Ethan's perspective, the endless galas his father dragged him to were a tedious chore, a performance of smiles and pleasantries. Then he saw Julian Sterling. Julian was like the sun, vibrant and captivating, a magnetic presence in a room of shadows. He began to watch him, to learn about him. The fact that Julian was a lesser alpha meant nothing. He was simply the man who had captured his heart. He still remembered the night he'd found Julian drunk in a washroom, face flushed, muttering to himself. The urge to kiss his full lips had been nearly unbearable. At their next encounter, he intentionally let his pheromones drift towards Julian, a small, secret claim. When Julian's father came to discuss the marriage, Ethan had to conceal his elation. But his joy was tempered by the doctor's S. His impending rut made their wedding night an impossibility. He kept his distance to protect Julian, a private torment he could not share. The night Julian finally came to him, drunk and bold, was the end of his self-control. When he returned from his trip to find the divorce papers, his world fractured. He searched frantically, his calls blocked, his messages unanswered. Finding Julian was the only thing that mattered. He would have torn his own heart out to prove his love. If his biology was the wall between them, he would tear that down, too. The gland was a small price to pay for a lifetime with the man he loved. Years later, Julian returned from their son's parent-teacher conference in a state of exasperation. Caleb, it seemed, was a constant source of trouble, pulling pigtails and stealing snacks. Julian declared that Ethan would be handling all future school meetings. Ethan just laughed, pulling his husband into his arms and promising to talk to the boy. He knew their son's mischievous spirit would one day be tamed by an Omega who would capture his heart completely. For now, he was content. He had his family, his life, his Julian. The camellia and the jasmine would bloom together, always.